So I hope that was a clear demonstration that the simple methods do work. You just need to know how much you need to do of this, and what name that number on top of the turret here has doesn't really matter. Okay, so that's me on the ferry, and this is basically to illustrate how early I do the various decisions. I've already been on the internet and I've found the pressure, and I know that we're going to have a light wind and it's going to be in from the right. Now temperature is going to be right around my calibration, but the pressure will be significantly higher. It's a predicted 1023, which should be around 1011 actual. We'll measure that. And also I need to check my zero, because the front foot on my scope mount seemed to have moved. So I have to redo the 100 meter shooting, or 118, and see if we are on the same place. So that's the zero shift. And this is the new zero. Now see how I'm on the side of the target here, and that means with the spin drift and at range, that's going to drift into zero. So at around 500-600 meters, this small shift to the side is going to be dead center, like a no wind hold. Now I've shown you how I take the pressure from the weather forecast. I've shown you how to calculate that to the station pressure, which is the pressure that will affect the bullet. And I've also shown you how to look at the weather forecast and predict a light, medium or strong wind before I arrive at the scene. And when I arrive at the range, it's basically a very small check just to confirm that my previous predictions are correct. Now what you are seeing here on the vegetation, roughly at chest level, is the light movement, which makes me class today's wind in the light category. Now when these leaves grow fuller, you will see that they wave. And if they wave like this, you have a 1 meter second wind. And when I do like this, I mean that this could be waving, this could be waving, that could be still, that could be still. Whereas when it changes to this, everything is waving, we're up to 2 meters per second. And when you reach 3, which is medium wind, it's going to turn and show you the wind direction. And when you go into the stronger wind, you're going to have a slight bending. And when you go up to 5 or more, you will have this whipping motion. The wind will be bending it as much as it can, and then the tree will come back. And so all I need to do now for a long range proficiency test, providing there's nothing more wrong, is to correct the trajectory for the higher pressure and hold to the side and expect the bullet to hit immediate next to the crosshair.
This episode contains sponsored items. Before you go, subscribe, like and comment. Click the bell if you want notifications of new episodes.
So all I need to do now for a long-range proficiency test, providing there's nothing more wrong, is to correct the trajectory for the higher pressure and hold to the side and expect the bullet to hit immediate next to the crosshair. It's just incredible how I forget to turn on the trigger cam. That's recording. Just parallax, that's the target. Range okay, bipod okay. So that was marginal. So it looks like that was a pretty marginal hit on the left side there. Not sure why. Could be the zero. But anyway, elevation was absolutely perfect. And if we turn on the Kestrel, we'll see what it says for pressure. 1009, whereas the predicted was 1011. Let's check temperature. That's 14, And the calibration on the turret is 12, so that is an insignificant change. Okay, today isn't really too much of a lesson planned. I just need to get some volume behind the rifle, so I'm going to shoot these 2 boxes at the various targets. We'll see soon enough if there's something wrong with the Zero again, because that bullet took very far to the left and I can't see anything in the terrain that should indicate that much wind drift. We're going to shoot at the ballistic bar target at 608, but I know because of the higher pressure, if I dial 608 on the turret today, my shots are going to be low. The calibration on the turret here is 970 and the actual weather is 1010 for pressure, and that constitutes a significant change. It's almost 50 hectopascals. At that range, around 600, I know I need to add roughly 10 meters to the range when I dial with a BDC. I'll show you the math for that later. So if I go from the 525, which we saw was pretty perfect on the long range proficiency target, I go up to 600 and then I have 1, 2, 3, 4 clicks up to 625. So 25 meter range constitutes 4 clicks on the turret. 25 by 4 is 7. So 1 click on the turret will be roughly 7 meters, if I don't want to eyeball it. So if I go back to 600, 1 click, 607, that would have been a perfect match if the air pressure matched the turret calibration. I know I have to dial another 10 meters roughly, so I'm looking for 618, and 607 plus another 7 is 614, and that's as close as I'm going to get. I'm dialed at 614, we shoot at the 608 target, and we want to be as close to the ballistic bar as we can. Let's try that. And check the parallax simply by turning, so that's definitely out of focus, and that's also out of focus. Let's go back out of focus and turn it fairly fast, because your eye will try to compensate and you don't want that. And if there is a scale on your parallax adjustment, just disregard it, go by observation. Okay, a little more wind than I predicted, but pretty perfect. I wanted to dial 618 and I was able to dial 614. And the hit is marginally below the yellow. I guess I should rejoice. That was one of few lessons delivered on cue. Now the barrel is fairly hot, so I'm just going to have a coffee while we wait for that to settle down. So I hope that was a clear demonstration that the simple methods do work. Now, whether you use MOA, MRAD, MIL or a BDC, those 3 things are just a number with a name that indicates how much I need to do this. And regardless of you using a BDC like I do, the MRAD system, which is very popular, or the MOA, it doesn't change the assessment of the wind, it doesn't change the trajectory, and it doesn't change the action. You just need to know how much you need to do of this, and what name that number on top of the turret here has, doesn't really matter. Now let's examine that statement again. I use a laser rangefinder. I read the range off in meters, and going from meters to meters is a quicker way instead of having to transform meters to MRAD and then put that on the scope. Now we'll switch the 540 target, and we know that because of the higher air pressure I'm going to dial 550. That's 550 on the turret. You can of course buy a more expensive unit that calculates everything for you. There are a lot of products that say they do the job but don't necessarily do the job. You have seen how I have been needing to true my trajectory, and I wouldn't trust that to binoculars that give you so-so control on the trajectory. Anyway, a somewhat partial lesson there, or partially successful. And as you saw on the elevation side, whether the turret says a range, MOA or mil, it doesn't affect the result. Now I was too far on the left side, so if I go back to my target, it appears that I am more like 2 centimeters to the side instead of 1. So I'm actually going to correct my zero, 1 click right, because there's no way the wind we're now having is going to push the bullet 25 centimeters to the left. It doesn't happen. And also remember, when you do the wind observation, you look at chest level. So I'll be looking here, but I will not be using the vegetation down here. And to express it simplified but wrong, there's more friction along the ground, and that's going to break the wind. Because the wind is in layers, and the velocity will increase with the elevation. Elevation being distance above ground. So you need to look where your bullet will be flying. You look at chest level. And the wind brackets, light, medium, strong, is not separate brackets. There's a generous overlap between light, medium and strong. So you have 3 options. 1 will always clearly be wrong, and the other 2 will put the bullet on the target with a better or worse hit. So the light wind bracket, when you use the simplified method, it's going to do everything from 0.5 up to 2.5 meter per second wind. And at 3 meter per second, you will see the wind direction, and that's going to be the defining border for medium wind. But medium wind goes all the way down to 2.5, 2, and all the way up to 5. And the strong is defined by the whipping motion, and that can be anything from 4, 4.5, and all the way up to 8. When you are moving towards 10 meters per second, there's so much going on that you will have vibration and shaking, and in general it will be very difficult to put the bullet on the target. Okay, we're going to redo this exercise at 388, and I'll simply be shooting for volume there. We have the higher pressure, and we are not adding 10 meters at the 400 range, but rather 5. So I want to be dialed around 395. Now the wind is still weak, and it still comes in from the right hand side, and the bullet should strike fairly close to the center, perhaps a little low. And as always, it is the position, me being straight behind the rifle, that puts the rifle on the target. Checking natural point of aim, that's done by closing the eyes. Now they are open, and I'm off. Which means I will have to move my body, and we'll repeat the exercise, closing my eyes, open, and I'm on the same spot. So now I have the correct position. That's way off. And as you see, slightly below center. So this is what consistency is for me. Also, I'm now at 400 meters, which is what I feel comfortable shooting with a second focal plane where I have no support for the wind. At least you're seeing the difference in performance when I shoot at the 550 versus the 400 range, and you're starting to get a feel of what I regard as a good distance to work with a second focal plane versus the longer ranges where it is beneficial to put a more accurate number on the wind, and to reap the rewards of that job you are really best served with a first focal plane scope, because it doesn't really have proper wind support with a second focal plane scope. But it works just fine as long as you work inside the limitations, and for a lot of shooters it's going to cover the vast majority of the shots you need to make. Okay, I need to catch the ferry.
Subscribe to the THLR channel by clicking the left logo icon, so you'll be shooting straighter than a drunk skunk before the sun shines over northern Norway.